entire area was covered in a dense mist that kind of rose as we got there. It slowly exposed different levels until finally we were able to see the final hill, the resting place of Emperor Gaozong and Empress Wu.
The tombs of Emperor Gaozong and Empress Wu remain unexcavated today. As an archaeologist, the preservation of these tombs and keeping them unexcavated at this time really shows me the forethought of archaeologists here in China. We traveled to another location where we were able to access a tomb. This was the tomb of Princess Yongtai, the granddaughter of Empress Wu.
Princess Yongtai died at 17 years old under mysterious circumstances. The year was 701, right near the end of Empress Wu's reign.
The common belief about the princess's death is that Empress Wu ordered it because she feared that the princess was staging a coup. But on government record, it says that the princess died during childbirth.
A ramp about 200 feet long leads nearly 50 feet down into the ground to where the princess was interred. As we walk down the ramp, there are a number of windows on either side showing off the artifacts that were found in the excavation of this tomb.
We also got to see a reproduction of the murals that were originally found on the walls of the tombs, depicting servants that worked for the princess. One of the women depicted in these murals was known as the most beautiful woman in China. The sarcophagus that held the princess was very large and made out of a very rare form of black jade. The princess was buried with her husband, and both of the remains have been removed. The black jade sarcophagus is actually very rare and valuable in China.
Numerous animals and courtesans graced the sides of the sarcophagus, delicately carved in, presenting a really beautiful image for the princess's final resting place.
Today we traveled 18 miles outside the city of Xi'an.
We visited the burial mound of Qin Shi Huangdi, China's first emperor and the builder of the Terracotta army.
This is the biggest and most well-preserved burial mound in all of China.
Ascending to the throne in 247 BCE, Qin Shi Huangdi was only 13 years old. Despite his young age, he was able to consolidate power and quickly dominate all of his rivals, bringing an end to what is known as the Warring States period. In 221 BCE, he finally unified the entire nation of China, bringing it under the Qin Empire.
Emperor Qin Shi Huangdi began developing this area for his burial complex before he became the ultimate ruler. Behind me is the burial mound of Emperor Qin Shi Huangdi, China's first emperor.
Obsessed with his own mortality, he commissioned 700,000 workers to hand-make the entire hill there.
This man-made burial mound contains the mausoleum of the emperor. And although relatively little excavation has been done here, it is believed to contain a full-scale model of the Qin Empire.
Who knows what treasures still remain in the hill, or even in the area just below our feet. In addition to building the Terracotta army, Qin Shi Huangdi is also well known for being the first emperor to begin construction on the Great Wall of China. Additionally, he codified a broad system of laws and developed a system of roads throughout China that's longer today than the entire American highway network.
Under his reign, there were tremendous technological advances, including the standardization of weights and measures, Chinese script, as well as coinage.
Following 3 assassination attempts, Qin Shi Huangdi became increasingly worried about his mortality. He began searching for ways to become immortal, seeking out wizards and anyone who could possibly give him the secret to eternal life. He sent his armies throughout the realm looking for different ways to extend his life. One of the ways Qin Shi Huangdi believed he could attain immortality was through the ingestion of mercury. Throughout his entire reign of only 11 years, he was consistently consuming mercury at a level that is today very, very unsafe. Qin Shi Huangdi was also known to be against any kinds of scholarship and most free thought. During his reign, he ordered the burning of all books throughout the empire related to anything other than himself. He also ordered the burial of 406 live Confucian scholars. Archaeologists have yet to excavate the burial mound, partly because Qin Shi Huangdi is the first emperor and a national treasure, but also for health concerns. Reportedly, rivers of mercury surround his tomb and make the entire place relatively dangerous to excavate. This afternoon, we were also able to visit some actual archaeological excavations.
We got to visit two pits that adjoin the actual burial mound. At the first pit, we walked into a building that covered the excavations. This was the first time we saw archaeologists in action.
The archaeologists behind me are practicing many of the very same techniques that we do in America. While there are always differences between the ways different countries do their archaeology, it's always amazing how similar it is that we're all looking for the same sort of truth.
One of the archaeologists had long stretches of tape rolled out, and he was measuring and drawing sides of the wall and some of the artifacts there to document them for further research. Right below them, we were able to see a line of terracotta sculptures. There was also a group of archaeologists that were chipping away at an area.
Only discovered in 1999, the pit features a collection of 11 terracotta figures believed to be acrobats.
They were wearing short skirts, and their arms and their legs and top were actually bare.
The second pit we visited was only discovered in the year 2000.
It was about a third of the size of the other pit.
It features a similar construction style to the first pit, but has a different collection of figures inside.
We saw skeletons of horses. We also saw what may have been the outline of a chariot and some other terracotta figures.
Pit 2 contains 8 terracotta figures.
These ones may have been the chariot drivers, or they may have been lawyers. Some of the sculptures had different hand posturing. The one that I thought was interesting was two of the sculptures had their arms extended. It looked like you could almost imagine them holding the reins of the chariot. Each of the terracotta sculptures was a little bit different from the other one. They had different hairstyles, different facial expressions, and different types of dress. It was said that this represents the stables of the emperor.
In Pit 2, we can see the reconstruction of walls as they're originally believed to have been built. Panels stacked on top of one another would have been layered with beams over the top and then covered with a layer of dirt, leaving the inside completely open. Visiting the burial mound of Qin Shi Huangdi today was really exciting because it gives us a chance to put in context the man who built the Terracotta Army.
So tomorrow we're heading to the Terracotta Warriors, which is a little less than 2 miles away from here. I'm so excited. This is a world-renowned archaeological site, and we're going to get to learn firsthand from archaeologists there just what this is all about. Today was the finale of our trip. The last place that we visited was the home of the Terracotta Warriors.
Nothing can prepare you for the massive grandeur of this place.
It's huge.
Oh my God.
Wow. It was enormous in size. It's like a giant airplane hangar.
Probably fitting 5 football fields in the entire area.
and all the warriors are facing you. You have no idea of the size and the amount until you actually get here and experience this, huh?
Yeah, the guidebooks and the photos don't do it any justice.
Yeah. I had no idea of the scale of this until we actually got there.
Row upon row of soldiers arranged in a battle formation are wearing armor and wielding weapons, as though prepared to defend their emperor, both in life and in death.
It's believed in Chinese culture that the spirit lives on after life. So Emperor Chen Shi Huangdi wanted these warriors to protect his spirit in the afterlife. We're at pit number 1 of the Terracotta Warriors.
This is really one of the most amazing things I think I've ever seen. It is really great to be here. All of the soldiers in this room are infantry, meaning they attacked on foot with spears or swords.
At first, it looks like they're all in formation, they're all in straight rows, and they're all exactly the same. But as we began to walk and look a little bit closer, we began to see little details and variations in each of the warriors.
Each one of these is an individual, with individual hairstyles, armor, and weaponry. In Pit 1, over 2,000 terracotta soldiers have already been discovered. It's believed, however, that another 4,000 are still buried, and archaeologists are leaving these underground for future generations to unearth. The pit itself is composed of 11 corridors, each lined with soldiers. The walls in between these corridors are rammed earth.
I, as an archaeologist, originally thought that they were bulks that were left behind by the archaeologists, but come to find out that these were actually rooms that housed the different warriors.
These walls would have been lined with wooden planks and then laid over the top with wooden beams. On top of these were fiber mats, and on top of that was another layer of dirt, covering the entire interior section. While the majority of the statues in this room are very well preserved, an area in the middle shows just how archaeologists would have found them when they first did excavations. One of the most impressive things about this room is the preservation of all these statues. We spoke with the lead archaeologist at the site, Mr. Shen, who said, however, that this was not always the case.
当时呢，我们发现这个俑啊，在我们发掘的时候，绝大多数都倒了，很少有站立的。那么尤其我们在第3次考古发掘当中，仅见过一个是站着，其他全倒了。
So all these figures, were they reconstructed?
And here.
Or were they broken?
Yeah,
and
all broken.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Wow. So these had to be, what do you use? Some sort of glue?
Glue, yeah.
So when these soldiers break,
yeah.
How many pieces do you have to put back together?
That's not sure. Some is more than 100 pieces. Some is maybe 50, 60, yeah, 90.
Okay.
And how about, was there paint on these originally? Is the paint gone? Were they painted colors?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's gone.
But some part also still at there, also remain. Okay. Yeah, but then we cooperate with German and some other country to use some new way to protect it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they say that no two of these soldiers are the same. Is that true?
Yeah. 它开始先塑成一个模，然后当它细部的时候，它全部是用雕塑的办法来做。
It's not that each soldier had to come in and model for one of the artists.
在雕塑的时候呢，它这个就是因为每个人雕塑家他这个技术水平不一样，再一个他心中的模特不一样，他按照他心中的模特来雕塑的话，他每个细节上他都会有些区别，所以每个俑出来之后都会有点不是完全一样的。
We also got to learn a little bit more information about their construction, that they were made out of coils of clay that were hand pressed together and that they were hollow inside.
Getting to see some of the actual archaeological practices was a really exciting opportunity. Behind me, you can see some of Mr. Shen's team of about 20 archaeologists working in a field laboratory conducting experiments on some of the materials that they've dug out of the ground.
They're all professionally trained and have been to college, and that it's actually a great honor to be doing archaeology in China, specifically in this really interesting spot. The archaeologists are comprised of half male and half female. They do this as a professional job. It's not a university-sponsored thing. There's great government support here and a lot of funding for the work that's being done. The Chinese archaeologists here are seeking outside information and have been working with other countries. Their hope is to soon publish a report that will shed even more light on the Terracotta warriors.
One of the things that I was happiest to hear from Professor Shen was that archaeology is becoming one of the most sought-after majors in Chinese universities. To become an archaeology major requires a really high level of testing, which means that in the next generation, the archaeologists that China is producing are going to be working at a very high level. Overall, I was incredibly impressed by the sheer grandeur of this room, as well as the uniformity of all the soldiers held within the pit. How long have you worked at this site?
Maybe 22 years.
You are really lucky.
Thank you.
We moved on to pit number 2, which was quite different than what we had seen in pit number 1. It was a bit smaller scale and size.
Though not fully reconstructed, Pit 2 contains approximately 900 soldiers, 466 horses, and 89 chariots.
When we first entered the room, it's a little bit darker in this area, and you definitely don't get struck by all the warriors facing you. In fact, what you see here is more indication of the structures that actually contain the warriors.
At the other end of Pit 2, you can see the original ground surface. It's about 15 feet down to where the tomb of these ancient terracotta soldiers was actually discovered. Down here, what you see are the remains of the beams that went over that created an empty space where the terracotta soldiers were housed. All the ridges represent the wooden beams that have decomposed and filled in with earth over time.
We got to see a different set of warriors. The ones that we were seeing in Pit 1 were footmen, and they were infantry.
We find infantry along with numerous archers, including crossbowmen and longbowmen,